Hey friends, welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be doing a theory craft of the remaining 4 students from the Golden Deer House who haven't been added yet to FEH. So I do have a feeling that sometime in the next year we're going to see all or at least some of these units added to FEH. So here's my take on what Marianne, Leonie, Raphael, and Ignatz might look like if they were added to FEH. And of course this is their pre-time skip versions.
I'll follow your lead. My blood compels me!
First up is the pre-time skip version of Marianne, who is quite depressed and quite sad about life in general, so that's why I called her the Sorrowful Maiden, and she is an infantry sword user. I realized that the last time we received a sword infantry dancer was Fina all the way back in September 2019, so I thought Marianne would be the perfect pick for a sword infantry dancer. And the reason why she's a sword is because she's using Bloodgang, which is the hero's relic associated with her crest in 3 houses. The weapon Bloodgang deals magic damage the same way that Ignatz Axe Crusher does, so I tried to emulate that effect in Fire Emblem Heroes as well. So Bloodgang is a 16 might sword, it grants speed plus 3, and it calculates damage using the lower of foe's defense or res. And if a skill like Sing or Dance is used, target can move 1 extra space, and that turn only, does not stack, and no effect on cavalry allies. So the thing where it can make people move 1 extra space, it's slightly better than Azura's Grey Waves, because this also works on armors. However, it is slightly nerfed compared to Ignatz Crusher, which does work on range 1 cavalry units. However, I thought that might be a little bit too strong, because she is a dancer, so using a dancer alongside people like Ellie would and making him move 4 spaces would just be ridiculously strong in my opinion. Her base kit also comes with the skill Dance and no special, and her A slot is Attack Res Bond 4, her B slot is Defense Cantrip 3, and her C slot is Attack Res Gap 3. And overall, it's a pretty solid base kit, although you would most likely want to give her Wings of Mercy in her B slot instead, or something similar, and then change her C slot to be a slightly different skill. And I know Attack Res Gap doesn't sound like the best skill out there, and it kind of isn't, but it's also only available on Halloween Ileana currently, so it is still considered a somewhat premium skill. In terms of BST, I decided on 167 BST for her, and I did that by going back to Fina, who was the last sword infantry dancer that we got, and then adding BST based on what the BST power creep has been since then. And she's got 38 HP, 35 attack, 39 speed, 22 defense, and 33 resistance. And these stats are kind of modeled based on her growths in 3 houses. So she's got mediocre attack, good speed, and good resistance, but she's got low defense. Overall, I think Marianne is a really solid unit and would also make a pretty cool addition to the summoning pool, because if you look at the stats, it's actually been a really long time since we last got a non-mythic or non-seasonal dancer. So I think it would be cool to have her added to FEH in this way.
Strength in action. I'm on a roll!
Next up is Raphael, and his title in the game would be Cheerful Warrior because I feel like that's pretty descriptive of him as a person, and he is a green gauntlet weapon type and he's an armor. Raphael doesn't have any kind of crest in 3 houses, so he doesn't have a hero's relic in his family that he can use, so most people just use him with axes and with gauntlets. And I was initially just going to give him an axe like how I did with Balthus in my Ashen Wolves theory craft, but then you guys thought it would be pretty cool if gauntlets were actually added to the game, because I guess there are a decent amount of people who could use it, like for example a mythic Saros at some point in the future, Balthus could also use it, Caspar could use it, so I decided to introduce the gauntlets weapon type with Raphael in this banner. So I decided to make his weapon called Heavy Gauntlets, and it's a green gauntlet weapon type and it deals physical damage just like axes do, and it has 10 might and 1 range, and it inflicts speed -5, if unit initiates combat, unit attacks twice, and if unit deals damage to foe using a special, restores 30% of unit's maximum HP, and at start of combat, if unit's HP is greater than or equal to 50%, grants attack defense +6 to unit during combat. So basically, he's got a player phase Brave effect in his weapon, which is emulating the way that gauntlets work in 3 houses, and he's also got a thing where if he deals damage to foe using a special, restores 30% of unit's maximum HP. What this means basically is that you can use him as a Gale Forcer if you want, but it's not going to be ideal because it's just going to completely ignore one of the aspects of his weapon effect. And he's also got attack defense +6 to himself during combat if he has over 50% HP at the start of combat. And he's got ridiculously high HP, so that shouldn't be too hard to reach, especially with his amazing healing. Now, I would assume that if gauntlets were actually added to the game, since there aren't that many people who would actually use gauntlets, I would assume it would be introduced as a class of preferred weapons that all deal physical damage and all have the same might, and I would assume all of them would also have the inflict speed -5 and if unit initiates combat, unit attacks twice. So they would basically just be a class of physical weapons that are all brave weapons and all have 10 might. And I feel like that would be a pretty good emulation of the way that gauntlets work in Three Houses. He comes with Glimmer as a special, which synchronizes perfectly with Heavy Blade 4 in his A slot and the Brave effect from his weapon, so he's basically going to be hitting twice with his base kit, and the second hit is almost guaranteed to be a Glimmer. And he's got Bold Fighter in his B slot, which is basically just going to make him a quadding machine, and he's got Armored Stride in his C slot. His overall BST is 184, which is in line with the recent melee armors that we've gotten, including Gaytree and Hilda. And he's got 55 HP, which is really high, 43 attack, 19 speed, 44 defense, and 23 res. And he's really unique in the sense that he, unlike most armors nowadays, he's actually got 2 dump stats, so his res and his speed both suck, and that's in line with how he is in Three Houses. And because of that, you can pump a lot of stat points into his HP, attack, and defense. And I think overall that gives him a really unique stat line that is probably most reminiscent to Arden, but because he's a Gen 5 unit compared to Arden, who was a really early Gen unit, I think that makes him stand out. I think overall this Raphael is really solid, and I think he's really great just with his base kit. You can obviously replace his special or even the rest of his kit if you want, but I genuinely think he works best as a player phase unit, especially because since he's a gauntlet, you can't actually replace his weapon, so you're kind of locked into the player phase Brave effect. And like I said before, Gale Force is not really his ideal set just because it ignores part of his weapon effect, but you can still do it, and I feel like it would still be solid. Although honestly, if you want a green unit who's tanky and who can do Gale Force, you're probably better off using Legendary Edelgard.
I'll keep it simple. We do this together.
Next up is Leonie, and her title is Geralt's Apprentice because, especially before the time skip, her entire personality is basically centered around the fact that Geralt came to her village when she was younger, and she was like his apprentice, and she's kind of obsessed with him, so I think that's a fitting title for her. And she is a Lance Cavalry unit, and that's based on the fact that Geralt is also a Lance Cavalry unit, so she really wants to be like imitating him. Since Leonie doesn't have a crest, she doesn't have any Hero's Relic or special weapon in Three Houses, so in Fire Emblem Heroes she doesn't have any kind of weapon that she would canonically receive, so I decided to give her a weapon called Hunter's Javelin, and it's 16 might, it's a lance, and it accelerates special trigger, and at start of combat, if unit's HP is greater than or equal to 50%, the unit can counterattack regardless of foe's range, and enables Canto 3 during turns 1 through 4. So it's basically like Seiri's weapon, and also like Ossian's weapon, but it also has the Canto 3 effect built in, and that's something that the Cavalry class in Three Houses has. She comes with Bonfire as her special, Steady Posture 3 as her A skill, Lull Speed Defense 3 as her B skill, and Joint Hone Defense as her C skill. And I feel like these skills really work together alongside her weapon to make her a very good physical range tank. Her defense gets really high when you add in all of these skills. However, because she's actually quite fast as well, she can actually take a hit from a mage most of the time, and then she'll probably kill on retaliation. Overall, her BST is 168, and that's based on the stat total that Dusel and Kaden have, and she's got 39 HP, 37 attack, 40 speed, 32 defense, and 20 resistance, and these are pretty closely based on her growths in Three Houses. So she's obviously really dumping resistance, but because of that, she's got pretty good attack, speed, and defense. And because she has distant counter in her weapon, there are actually a lot of ways to patch up her resistance stat in her A skill, so you can give her something like Swift Stance instead if you want, or even Fortress Defense Res 3, or Bracing Stance 3. There are honestly a lot of options for someone who has distant counter in their weapon. Overall, I think Leonie would be a really solid addition to the blue pool, both just as a unit and also as fodder, because she does come with a lot of premium fodder. And the only other Lance Cav who has distant counter built into their weapon, if I recall correctly, is Camus, who is very outdated. So I feel like Leonie is a really good option if you want to build someone who already has distant counter in their weapon and is also a cavalry unit.
Let me paint you a picture! I actually won!
Last but not least is Ignatz, who is the 4-star focus of this banner, and I decided to make his title Devout Painter because he loves painting and he also really loves the goddess, and he loves painting the goddess too, so I thought that was a funny name for him, and he is an infantry colorless bow user. He's also a unit who doesn't have any crest in 3 houses, so he doesn't have a preferred weapon. However, I thought it would be cool to give him a preferred weapon in FEH because they did give Sedith a preferred weapon, and he was the 4-star focus of his banner as well. So I decided to give him a weapon called Painter's Bow, which has 14 might and range 2, and it's a colorless bow, and it accelerates special trigger, is effective against flying foes, and if unit is within 3 spaces of a dragon ally, grant attack speed defense res +4 to unit during combat, and inflict special cooldown charge -1 on foe per attack. So basically, if he's within 3 spaces of any kind of dragon ally, he gets a spectrum buff and he inflicts guard on the foe. And it is a really solid weapon, but because he is the 4-star focus, it's not really groundbreaking or anything. And the reason why I did within 3 spaces of a dragon ally is because, like I mentioned, he really loves the goddess, and I guess the goddess is like a dragon, so I thought it would be cool to pay tribute to that in his weapon. He comes with Swap as his assist, Luna as his special, Attack Defense Form 3 as his A skill, and Chill Speed 3 as his B skill. And obviously these aren't the best skills for him specifically, like you would probably switch out most of these skills, if not all of them, if you were actually building him, but I do think it's really solid to have this as fodder in the 4-star pool. Specifically Attack Defense Form 3 would be really nice to have available in the 3 4-star pool, so that's why I decided to go with these skills. His BST is 171, which is based on the BST of George and Ronan, and he's got 44 HP, 35 attack, 39 speed, 25 defense, and 28 resistance, and this is also loosely based on his stat growths in 3 houses. So he's got quite good HP, mediocre attack, pretty good speed, and pretty mixed balanced defense and resistance. Overall, he's got a really well-rounded stat line, kind of similar to Norn, and I feel like that makes him a really good candidate for a +10 merge project, and you can slap Spendthrift Bow and Close Foil on him, or just use his preferred weapon if you want, that could also work. You would just have to make sure that you're using a dragon on the team with him, but otherwise, I feel like he's a really solid unit overall, and brings both good fodder and good value to the 3 4-star pool. I honestly don't think that IS would release all 4 of these together on the same banner because aside from Marianne, the other 3 aren't really that popular and may honestly never get added to FEH, but I thought it would be really cool to theorycraft them together since they are the only remaining Golden Deer students who aren't in FEH yet. And if there was a Grand Hero battle, which there would be, it would probably be like Solin or Tomas or maybe even Thales, so that's also a really cool concept that they could run with. Honestly, this banner might seem kind of strong, but if you look at all the new heroes banners that we've gotten specifically since Choose Your Legends 4, they've been honestly all really strong with really good units and good fodder as well. So I feel like this is pretty reasonable in terms of power level compared to what we've been getting recently. But let me know in the comments what you guys think of this banner and whether you think that the power level is too high or too low, and let me know if you would pull for any of these units because personally I feel like I would want to pull for Marianne. I feel like she would be really annoying if you put her on an AR defense team. But yeah, thank you guys for watching and have a great day.